And then how do, in times of uncertainty, like we have right now, right? Earlier you talked about unknowns and the future being the biggest unknown, but right now it's less about the future unknown. I think there's just a lot of uncertainty, which seems tangentially related, but almost worse. How do you talk to people about processing information, making sure that they have the sound decision making, and then really operating in a time where every decision, every action feels like it just has more weight on it, and that there's a lot of uncertainty in the air?
So the first skill is just to be able to sit with it, is literally just to be able to tolerate the uncertainty and go, you know what? I can't make what I think is a good prediction or a good bet. That's a skill. Like, a lot of people can't do that. And I think we're seeing like a lot of decisions being made that are about assuaging the fact that that's an uncomfortable place to be. Because when you make a decision, it feels a little bit more certain just because you decided, even though, you know, the California schools are my example of that. Like a week or so ago, they said, you know, no classes in the fall. I'm like, on May, whatever it was, 15th, they didn't need to make that decision, but it made them feel like more certain. So there's the skill of just being able to tolerate it. Then there's like making lists of, okay, what do we know? What's not knowable? What can we maybe find out a little bit more about? And when do we really have to make this decision? Like, I know someone, you know, startup company, New York, thinks that they've heard me talk about, like, do I really have to make the decision and for what period of time? You know, their lease is coming up, I don't know when, I think it's in the fall. And the staff has all been like, are we going back? Are we going to sign the lease? And the CEO has been like, I don't know, not making that decision today. We don't have to make that decision today. But again, like, how do you do that? You have to be able to tolerate the fact that you don't know. So there tends to be a bias for action. And I think that bias for action is somewhat misguided. You know, there's this idea that people default to inaction. I think it's generally the other way around. People want to do something to make the feelings go away. And just live with the feelings, you'll figure out a better thing to do as time unfolds.
I've always thought of it, whether it's right or not, as people want to feel in control, right? And the way that you feel in control is that you do something. I can impact the situation, whether it ends up being a good impact or not. And one of my favorite studies, I can't remember if it was Vanguard or Fidelity. You know, somebody did a analysis on the best performing accounts they had, and in the retail sector, it was people who had forgotten their passwords or died.
Right.
Because it was just they didn't do anything.
Right. Yeah.
And
my father was one of those, just because he literally started buying stock and he never sold any. He didn't know how to sell any. He put stock in dividend reinvestment programs and he wouldn't have known how to sell.
Yeah, it probably wasn't a bad strategy. I guess right. The other aspect of kind of uncertainty, and especially right now, I think is a time where people are thinking about this, is fear, right? So uncertainty to me feels like, again, if you pull out a scale, it's not on the easy end, but it's not on the most extreme of the hard decision-making. It's just an uncomfortable aspect right. of the scale. Fear is like the extreme end of, I am literally scared I am going to lose money, make a bad decision, you know, whatever it ends up being. How do you talk to, especially large asset managers, right? Where that fear, if it ends up becoming reality, they don't just lose $20, right? We're talking, you know, millions or tens of millions of dollars, other people's money. How do you talk to them about fear and kind of walk them through when they are fearful?
Yeah, so a superpower question to be able to answer is, what am I feeling and why am I feeling it? So I try to get them to put that fear into words. And I often try to get them to really get to why. And so I've asked more in the past 2 months than I've asked in a long time. What's the worst that can happen? So again, this is something that I think is a little bit different about our method. Like we're going right at the fear. And almost universally, the worst that can happen, actually, if the person really tries to answer that question, is some version of catastrophe. You know, they go through losing money, losing investors, losing employees, losing their fun, losing their spouse. Their life is a disaster. I mean, this is a long time ago, but I once had someone tell me, and my kids are drug dealers and prostitutes. Like, it's sort of a natural human tendency to down deep in there, you have this catastrophe scenario. And you don't realize it because you're not going down the rabbit hole, because you're told not to, by the way. But it's that catastrophe prediction that's like just barely, that's influencing you. And what happens is when you look at it, you go, oh, wait, well, that's probably not likely to happen. But even if it is going to happen, there's like 100 steps between here and there that I can, you know, avert that reality. So that's a long-winded way of saying I get all the fears out in the open. And then we look at them. Which ones are real and which ones are exaggerated? Which ones are relevant to whatever decisions you got to make right now? And which ones are irrelevant, you know, meaning they're about something else, or they can be put off, or so it's like sorting through the spaghetti bowl of fear. And it's using this research that says emotion differentiation or emotion granularity, meaning like fear, panic, nervousness, worry, doubt, like all the different intensities. Being able to sort through that shows you act on it less, ironically. Being able to sort through it gives you a wider range of choices and stops you from impulsively acting on it just to feel better or to feel in control or whatever.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Again, it's around awareness, right? Kind of having an understanding of what's happening makes it less powerful to some degree, like the forces being acted on you. The age-old question I know somebody listening to this will ask is, are the absolute best in the world ever scared? Or do they have the emotional control to avoid fear and maybe just sit with the uncertainty? Or does it ever get to that point?
Well, I haven't talked to every last single one of them, so maybe there's somebody out there that's, you know, less human than the next one. But it's actually, I mean, it's a strength to be able to admit fear. Like, and also in its pure form, it's a source of information. So I think the very best in the world understand it that way, that, you know, some fears are warning you of something you should be afraid of. Some are irrelevant. The skill is to know the difference.